Hello, and welcome to Innovation Lab, your go-to resource for all things biotech startups. Brought by the National Cancer Institute's Small Business Innovation Research, SBIR Development Center. Our podcast hosts interviews with successful entrepreneurs and provides resources for small businesses looking to take their cutting-edge cancer solutions from lab to market. I'm Michael Weingarten, the Director of NCI SBIR, and today's host. In this episode, you will hear from a medical imaging company funded by the NCI SBIR program about the journey from postdoc to biotech startup. Reflection Medical founder and Chief Technology Officer Sam Mason will share how the company leveraged SBIR support on their way to receiving FDA clearance for their technology that revolutionizes radiotherapy for tackling metastatic disease. Now, without any further ado, here's Sam Mason, founder and Chief Technology Officer of Reflection Medical. I thought maybe a first good question would be if you can kind of tell us how you started your journey as an entrepreneur.
Well, I was trained in computer engineering at the University of Waterloo in Canada. That's where I did my undergraduate, and then came to Stanford for graduate work in a field called medical imaging. So that's where I fell in love with medical imaging by just taking a class and understanding how just with basic energy systems we can see inside the body without touching the body. So I was just fascinated by that. It was during a postdoc in the same program that I had this idea for Reflection. I was pursuing an academic path, but I was struck by this idea because it was a natural marriage of the field I was in with a field I was just recently exposed to, and that was radiation therapy. And so that's what kind of set me off on this entrepreneurial journey. I was not planning to be an entrepreneur, but it was an idea that I guess wouldn't let go of me. and so I just had to keep pursuing it, and eventually co-founded the company with a high school buddy of mine, Akshay Nanduri, as you know him as well, of course, and the rest is history.
I think it would be really interesting for the audience just to learn a little bit more about the technology that you're developing now, and kind of maybe a little bit more about the original idea and how you guys developed it.
This is a technology that is really meant to tackle, for the first time, stage 4 cancer with a machine. The idea germinated while I was a postdoc, and I knew a lot about how medical imaging worked, how CT scans, MRI scans, PET scans worked, and particularly PET, which involves the administration of a radiopharmaceutical in the body that literally has cancer light up, so that a PET scanner can kind of see where cancer is. It's one of the best ways of actually visualizing cancer in the body. To my knowledge, that had not been used at all in conjunction with radiation therapy, which is using high energy X-rays to treat cancer, at least at the time of treatment. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if the machine that's being used to treat the cancer could also see it, and not only see it, but see it live in real time. So my idea was actually a way to circumvent the slow PET imaging process. And instead of using a PET image, which is how naturally people would think of a PET scan, the innovation was to use the actual emissions, the stream of signals that are literally coming out of cancer cells to the PET scanner, use those same signals, but integrate a radiation therapy machine around it that will detect those signals in real time and then shoot back or reflect the radiation back where it's coming from, hence the name of the company. And so that was the germ of the idea that my co-founder and I started to really pursue in earnest. We didn't realize how long of a pursuit that would be and how arduous, but we're still on that journey, of course, as a company. But that's how it got started.
The Reflection technology, how is it an improvement over the current state of the art in terms of what it will offer for patients going forward?
Reflection, because it uses this PET signal, or this, what we essentially call it a biological signal, to direct the radiotherapy beam, it's the first time you have this real-time direct targeting mechanism that's being mediated through a radiopharmaceutical, through an actual molecule that is taken up by the cancer itself. So the reason why that's important and significant is because current radiation therapy technologies are all based on some form of anatomic imaging, as opposed to real-time biological targeting. And so that really limits their ability, for a variety of reasons, to treat more than just one or two tumors in the body. And if you really want to tackle stage 4 or metastatic cancer, where patients unfortunately have more than just one or two tumors in their body, they can have 5, 6, 7, 10, sometimes more. You need a technology that is going to be able to achieve that. And so that's exactly what we call biology-guided radiotherapy, which we've now dubbed as Syntix therapy, to be able to really add an option for the stage 4 or metastatic patient beyond the current standard of care, and in addition to that current standard of care, which is predominantly drug therapy, and really do better in that field and in that type of patient. As we all appreciate, when someone is diagnosed with cancer, one of the first questions you might ask that loved one or friend is, did you catch it early, or what stage is it? And because stage is such an indicator of not only how advanced the disease is, of course, but the types of treatments that are even available and how effective they might be. And the later the stage, the narrower the suite of treatments that are available for that patient. So that by stage 4, typically it's only drug therapies that are available. Although there are many exciting drug therapies, a lot of innovation has happened on that front. If you look at outcomes data, it's still very poor compared to the efficacy that you see in earlier stage disease, where local therapy like surgery or radiation are the predominant modes of care. So what we're trying to do is add a new option and bring radiation, external beam radiation, as a modality in the stage 4 setting alongside the drug therapy, to try to really give the patient the best chance at beating back their cancer.
This technology will actually enable the first time that you'll be able to effectively use radiation therapy for phase 4 cancer patients in an effective way. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, there is a real push in the clinical community to use radiation in the stage 4 setting now, in metastatic patients now. However, it's really limited to what's called a oligometastatic disease. So these are patients with just a few, maybe one or two tumors. And it's really difficult for these technologies to scale to treat more than just a few tumors in the body. So this really does open up the door to more broadly treat metastatic disease and scale to larger patient populations. And we believe, anywhere around any clinic around the world, because, one of our goals is to really be able to improve the efficacy of treatments for stage 4 cancer. And you can only do that if you are in the community setting, not just in the academic center setting. And so, we've also designed this machine to be in the community clinic as well.
Maybe you can talk a little bit more also about the role that SBIR played in helping you develop the technology and also in growing the company as a whole.
Of course. I mean, the NCI SBIR program has been such an important part of Reflection's development, especially on the earlier side, when it was really hard to convince investors to put money in the company. So Akshay and I, we were knocking on the doors of the venture capitalists on Sand Hill Road saying, hey, we need $10 million to build a machine that we won't know it'll work until we build it. And you can imagine the type of reception we received right off the bat. And so, we had to really look for ways to find capital, but also find validation for this technology. The NCI SBIR program was one obvious way to help solve two of those two issues. A startup, I think many entrepreneurs will say initially, is really about runway. How much time do you have to get to that next milestone? And time is money. It's capital that you need to survive, to keep going, to keep not just keep the lights on, but keep moving forward and developing your technology. So our first interactions with the NCI SBIR were through contacting program director there at the time. His name is David Balin, and we pitched to him just like we're pitching to an investor, right? We tried to basically convince David that this is an groundbreaking technology, because one of the challenges with any type of grant mechanism is you still have to go through a process where you have to show some preliminary data to show that your technology will work, right? You're going to get scored through a scientific review process, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, because we didn't have this machine to generate the preliminary data. We needed money to build the machine. So what was great though is that, as David came to understand, part of this chicken and egg we were in, it was important guidance we received from him on how to go through the process and be successful in being able to get those first grants from the NCI. But those were our first interactions back, I think, in around 2010 or so, when we received our first phase 1 grant, which was important, again, not just for the capital part, which again, it helps with the runway, but validation. Investors look at it as, well, look, this did go through a rigorous scientific review process. This also went through a process that the NCI SBIR has in terms of getting other entrepreneurs to review these applications. And so there's both a commercial and a scientific basis for passing that gate. And so, that's certainly recognized by the investment community. So I think there are a multitude of factors that, why we wanted to try to get SBIR money, as soon as we could. Predominantly, those funds and those projects were aimed at mitigating the technical risk of the project. And that was really the biggest risk. We had to build a machine in the radiation therapy field. These machines rotate at about 1 revolution per minute. And we had to build a machine that for the first time would rotate these high energy, linear accelerators at 1 revolution per second. And so that was a really large technical risk we had to overcome. And, as it turned out, one of the things I learned along the way in terms of how investors think about risk, that's the hardest one for an investor to get their minds wrapped around. It's the hardest one to predict and assess. Clinical risk, well, you can assess that by what does it take to kind of develop a clinical study, and how long will that trial take to read out, and you can look at your outcome data to mitigate that. Market risk, you can get your head around, well, what does the adoption curve look like? How are customers adopting this technology? Technical risk is a really funny beast, because you don't necessarily know what you don't know. And so because of that, investors really shy away. And that's why we had a really tough time raising venture capital, I think, in the early years. So that's, I think, where the NCI SBIR program helped us the most, and where I would advise other entrepreneurs, if technical risk is a big challenge for you, it is a great program to try to leverage.
What has been the most meaningful part of this entire journey for you?
When you actually see your own idea touch a patient in a positive way, that's the most meaningful part right there. That makes it all completely worth it and more. The other, I think, really inspiring part of it is to watch, such talented people that, we managed to recruit into the company, make this vision become a reality. And it just gives you such a hopeful feeling for what humanity can do when you have kind of a shared mission and vision, what's achievable, what's possible. I think we take it for granted, but concepts that, like this one, which seems so much like science fiction, right? Literally, you put a patient on a table, the machine senses where the cancer is and treats it without even touching the patient. We take it for granted that those types of technologies are developed on a continuous basis, and I think it just, seeing it firsthand is such an inspiration to myself for what we, as humans can achieve. So, there are multiple reasons why I'm so proud to be, part of this company. The Reflection X1 machine is now installed in 4 sites across the US. So specifically at Stanford, City of Hope in Southern California, University of Texas Southwestern in Dallas, and UPMC in Pittsburgh. And we have been treating patients for almost 2 years now. There have been, I think, over 4,500 patient treatments delivered by those machines I listed. So we're very proud of the fact that we're already having an impact in cancer care and finally using our machine to try to beat the disease. Of course, we are, as you mentioned, we're also waiting for FDA clearance for the biology-guided part of the machine, which we're calling Syntix therapy, and that's what engages the PET scanner to be used for, basically using those emissions to guide the radiotherapy beam in real time and have the cancer literally talk to the machine and be able to open up applications like metastatic disease and others for cancer treatment. FDA guided us to a de novo pathway, de novo literally meaning new. In fact, they also gave us breakthrough device designation status, particularly in cancers in the lung. Because of that newness, we had to also cross a clinical bar of evidence that was traditionally higher than previous for external beam radiotherapy systems. So we conducted a clinical study last year that was successful. And now we believe, very, very close to, knock on wood, FDA de novo approval for Syntix therapy. So that's something that we're hoping to launch early next year, if all goes well with the approval, and get Syntix therapy along with the conventional image-guided therapy that'll continue into patients as soon as possible.
What are just some of the key lessons learned along your commercialization journey that you can share with us?
Probably the first one is it takes longer than you think. I mean, it's funny how, I don't know, arrogant, or I don't know the right word is, but we were pretty optimistic, let's just say. And, and a cold dose of reality would hit us on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. People would tell us it's going to take longer than you think. And they were right. So plan for that. I think, if your science is sound, or at least your evidence for what you're building is sound, unless that changes along the way, then there's no reason why you should stop pursuing it. And I think the other key lesson is, and this is something thankfully we had ingrained in us from the beginning, because neither Akshay or I were in the radiation therapy field to begin with. Not only that, we weren't and aren't MDs either. So we were already in a space very outside what we were comfortable with, both from an industry and a clinical perspective. And so we knew right away we need to hire people that are more experienced and smarter than us in these areas. The smarter, the better. You want, try to be the dumbest person in the room. It's hard to go wrong when you do that. But recognize where you really do need to complement your team early on and throughout the company's life, and be honest with yourself about that. So those are probably the two most important lessons I'd say I learned. An entrepreneur is literally, like by definition, charting unexplored territory. And so that, that means that no one knows what that next bend in the path is going to look like. It's always easy to look back and you see the entire path. You see all the windings that happen. You can also connect those dots really well, but not knowing the future is something you have to become comfortable with and realize that also is a sign you are charting an unknown territory. And so don't let that dissuade you, I would say. I like to tell people that entrepreneurship requires 3 important traits: vision, persistence, and ignorance. And we shouldn't underestimate the importance of ignorance sometimes, because I think it keeps us appropriately naive and it encourages us to be optimistic.
Well, listen, Sam, I want to thank you for joining us today. I think this has been a wonderful experience. It's been great working with you and with others at Reflexion over the last 12 years now. And we really look forward to your continued success as the company moves forward.
We really appreciate what you guys have helped us do.
What a great story. Special thanks to Sam Mazin from Reflexion for speaking with us today. As always, don't forget to check our website, sbir.cancer.gov, for the latest funding opportunities and commercialization resources to support your journey from lab to market. This was Michael Weingarten from NCI SBIR. Please join us again for the next installment of NCI SBIR Innovation Lab and subscribe today wherever you listen. If you have questions about cancer or comments about this podcast, email us at nciinfo@nih.gov or call us at 800-422-6237. And please be sure to mention Innovation Lab in your query. We are a production of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, National Institutes of Health, National Cancer Institute. Thanks for listening.